Everyone, thank you so much for having us. We are thrilled to be here, and I'm excited to share with you the story of how one company is transforming an entire industry, and that is not hyperbole. All right, so we'll get to that in a moment. You know, at IBM, I think Jason said it well, we are bringing AI-driven solutions to thousands of companies, and you might think about the work we're doing with many Fortune 500s, but we're also working with a lot of startups, and I'm really excited to have one of those here today. You know, and I think it's interesting because, let's face it, Rashir stole my thunder here, but when he said AI is not magic, but it's true. There is no wand that you can wave at enterprise inefficiencies, right? It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of data preparation. There is no AI without information architecture. As we like to say, we have t-shirts that say no AI without IA. If you want one, you can talk to Tom in the back. But really, when we talk about AI at the enterprise level, we're talking about three things: predictions, automation, and optimization. So predictions. We really just want to be able to forecast what's going to happen in our business, whether that's at the micro level or at the macro level. Automation, I think that's what we're going to talk about quite a bit today, so I'm not going to really talk about that. But when you think about all of these complex manual processes that a lot of us do in our day-to-day lives, that's an opportunity for AI, right? And then optimization, where we've got really complex tasks. How do you start to break them down? How do you start to make them better? How do you make them easier? So we'll get to that as well. But I want to start with a question. So for all of you in the audience, what percentage, this is a question, what percentage of time do you think a legal professional, a lawyer, an associate, spends actually in the courtroom litigating a case? What percentage? Come on, throw it out. You guys are right. Good. 1%. 1% of the time. So what Enoch shared with me, and we'll let him share more with you in a minute, is that 99% of a legal professional's time isn't spent in a courtroom, but instead in an office reading and preparing responses for every single case that gets filed. And while it's critical to litigation, let's face it, it's tedious. It's time-consuming, it's manual, and it's a lot of work for a lot of paralegals and associates. So enter Legalmation. Their mission is to liberate lawyers and to make it easier with them. And so with IBM Watson, they're automating the legal brief process and empowering lawyers to focus on more compelling work. And so with that, I want to introduce you to Enoch Liang. He's a lawyer. He's a co-founder, and he's the Chief Strategy Officer of Legalmation. And Enoch spent 20 years practicing law and brought AI into his firm through experimentation as a way to improve the processes of that legal firm and to give them a competitive edge. But what I find most interesting, and hopefully what you'll take away here, is that Enoch didn't set out to work for a legal tech firm, much less found one, but that's exactly what he's done. So Enoch, thank you so much for joining me here today. Why don't you share a little bit more of your story and how you went from practicing law to, frankly, founding an AI startup?
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you, everybody. I didn't go to law school to start a legal tech startup, but I also didn't go to law school to spend 99% of my time in the office drafting briefs. I thought I went to law school to be in the courtroom and advocate for my clients. And so I was a practicing lawyer for 20 years, 10 of which I started my own firm, so about 10 years ago. And we grew that firm to about 40 litigators. And that sounds like a lot. How many people here have any experience with litigation? Hopefully not many. Okay, so there's some. That sounds like a lot, but when you're going up against global law firms with 2,000 plus lawyers, you need to have a technological edge. And so that's what we did for our firm, was we started exploring artificial intelligence to equip our lawyers, a team of commandos, to go up against an army on the other side. And that's how we first found IBM Watson. And we just started experimenting internally at our firm to try to arm our lawyers with better technology. And what ended up happening was our clients saw what we were doing, and they said, that's great, but you guys are only 40 lawyers in California. Can we use your tools nationwide on all of our cases. And that's when the light bulb kind of went on, and we said, well, this could actually be a separate business. And so we spun it off about 2 years ago.
That's fantastic. I mean, and really remarkable, again, sort of fell into this opportunity to become a startup and help not just the firm that you're at, but then now helping other firms as well as clients. So tell us a little bit about the solutions that you've developed and what you're bringing to market for your clients.
Right. So just a little bit of background about litigation. Litigation starts when a plaintiff files a complaint and serves the defendant. Then the defendant has to draft what's known as an answer and affirmative defenses, and can then start the litigation process by serving discovery requests on the other side.
Right.
And so that happens in every single case, whether you're in the United States or in Canada or Australia or the UK. And as you can imagine, if you're a large insurance company, if you're a large retailer, you're constantly getting hit with insurance claims, motor vehicle cases, employment disputes, contractual disputes. And so what we decided to do was to solve that very first pain point, which is when you're served with a complaint, how do you respond to the complaint? And so that became our Module 1 product. And we've now automated that using IBM Watson, where a complaint comes in.
Okay.
Let's say it's on Walmart, who was our first customer. The Walmart paralegal just uploads it to our site. 2 minutes later, they get a first draft of an answer, affirmative defenses, requests for documents, requests for information. And in the past, that would take an associate or a paralegal somewhere from 8 to 12 hours, and we're able to automate it in 2 minutes. So
that's pretty remarkable. So you talked a little bit about Walmart as it was your first client, right?
Yes.
So who else are you working with? And let's talk a little bit about the value you're bringing. We've got some stats here, which I think are absolutely incredible. So 80% cost savings and more from having a higher quality response. 2 minutes or less to actually draft something that you said took 8 to 10 hours. So what do your clients think?
Our clients love it. The law firms, not so much. That is true, because we're taking revenue away from the law firms, essentially. And so our clients are, the publicly disclosed ones are Walmart and the largest employment law firm in the United States, Ogletree Deakins. Our non-disclosed clients, as you can imagine, are going to be the insurance companies, financial services institutions, et cetera. And we're starting to roll out for like the financial services institutions, automatically preparing their complaints based on the data that are in their systems for credit card default, loan default, motor vehicle default, et cetera. So those are the types of industries that we're targeting. I was half joking when I said law firms don't like us. There are law firms, forward-thinking law firms, that are using us, but mainly they're using us for work that is flat rate, so therefore it makes sense to be efficient, right? Because that hits your bottom line. If you're more efficient, then you can make more money on the flat rate cases. But for the firms that are still billing hourly, they don't like us so much because we're decreasing their billable hour.
Well, I think that raises a really good point, because, I mean, truly you're reimagining the way that lawyers and legal firms actually work. So how is this going to change the model going forward? What does the law firm of the future look like as a result of the type of technology that you're bringing to bear?
Well, I don't just think it's law firms. I think it's most professional services organizations. So whether you're a consultant, an accountant, a lawyer, for hundreds of years, the model has almost always been a pyramid, right? You've got a lot of young graduates at the bottom, and they kind of filter up to the partners at the top, because there's so much rote process volume work, whether you're in consulting, accounting, financial services, or law, that's done by the paraprofessionals and the young professionals. And they kind of filter out and go up to the pyramid where the partners are on top. I think that bottom layer of work will be replaced by automation and AI. And eventually, I think you're going to end up with more of a diamond shape, where you're going to have less professionals at the bottom. A lot of it's going to be automated.
Okay.
And then it's going to go back up in a diamond to the top. So I think that it's not just me saying that. That's McKinsey saying that, Deloitte. I mean, all the studies are showing that In 5 years, the low estimate is 13% of legal work can be automated, and the high estimate is 39% can be automated. So that's a lot.
I think that's pretty incredible, actually. But something we talked about, and I think that we haven't really touched too much on this today, but even though we're doing a lot with automation, and that's where AI is proving to be really valuable, we talked about the fact that there's still a human in the loop and the importance of that person who's helping, right? So the AI can make a recommendation. The AI can make, especially when it's drafting a brief, it can come up with a recommendation for what that looks like. But at the end of the day, the decisions that law firms, that legal professionals, that any professional services organization is making, there's still a human in the loop. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why we say our tagline is liberating lawyers, because nobody went to law school to write answers in draft discovery or respond to discovery. You went to law school thinking that you were going to be in the courtroom, that you were going to be advising your clients, et cetera. And so that's why we consider our product as first draft work product. It still has to be reviewed by lawyers. A lawyer in the end still has to sign the document with his or her name, and that has consequences. It's regulated by the courts, it's regulated by the state bar. So we view it as a man and machine partnership to make the practice of law freer and more fun for lawyers.
I think that's great. I love that. So I want to talk a little bit about the future, because you and I discussed something that I thought was really interesting, right? This concept of Moneyball for lawyers, right? So what exactly is it that you're doing, and how is it going to transform this field even more? Because it sounds pretty compelling.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we started off solving the first entry point problem, which was you get served a complaint. Now we can have AI prepare the first draft response, including the discovery requests. And then what's the second pain point? Well, the second pain point is if you receive discovery responses, you have to prepare, if you receive discovery requests, you have to prepare discovery responses. And it's totally typical in a litigation to get 200, 300 discovery requests. And so the second point we solved was, let's have the machine automatically generate the discovery responses. And so what we're working to do is, at every single pain point along the way for litigation, to have an automated solution for it. Well, ultimately what that leads to, and we've already started pilots on this and proof of concepts using our own law firm's data, which is an advantage, having your own law firm's data, because everybody thinks their data is gold and won't share it, is we want to create data analytics for litigators. So kind of like Moneyball for litigators. Because right now, nobody knows, there are no statistics about how good or how bad, how many times a litigator has won or lost. It's very much like baseball in the 1980s. It's just kind of, that person looks like a good litigator, or that person has a good reputation, let's hire that person. Well, with the data that we're collecting by taking the unstructured data in a complaint and collecting all of that data, we are able to give you a data-driven approach, basically Moneyball for litigation, so that companies can say, okay, this is an age discrimination case filed in Texas where the plaintiff was 60 years old, but had worked for the company for 20 years, and this plaintiff was laid off. Using this plaintiff's lawyer, this judge, this jury, and this venue, how much does it typically cost to litigate? What is the typical settlement value? What is the typical verdict exposure? As you can imagine, with that kind of data, companies can make data-driven decisions, as opposed to a 45-year-old age discrimination case in California where the plaintiff had only worked at the company for 2 years. So we want to be able to help companies make data-driven decisions on resolving litigation, choosing their lawyers, et cetera.
I think that's pretty incredible. Moneyball for litigation. I love that concept and idea. How close are you to getting that done? You said you're already in pilot stage. What do you think in terms of full rollout?
Well, we did the test on 200 cases that my own law firm had handled over the last 5 years.
Wow.
And we were able to get some insights, but honestly, 200 data points isn't very much.
Right.
I think that we need data points in the 5,000, 10,000 range. And so we publicly announced a pilot with both Walmart and Ogletree Deakins last week at a legal tech conference. And
Oh,
so we're working on
congratulations.
that
That's
already.
great.
Yeah.
All right, so if anybody is interested in getting into Moneyball for litigation, you know who to talk to. So tell me, and I think before we run out of time, I'd love to probably share with everyone, what are some of the lessons that you've learned? We talked about AI being hard work. Maybe you can share some of the lessons that you've learned at LegalMation, might be able to help some of these folks.
Yeah. I think that we've learned a couple of things that are probably worth sharing. I think one of the themes that's been repeated is AI isn't magic, and that is very, very true. In our company, we are actually pairing roughly 3 lawyers to every software engineer, is the ratio at our company, because you need fast iteration and you need fast feedback, and it takes, in our experience, roughly 2.5 to 3.5 experts in the field working with a software developer in order to get results.
So you have lawyers actually helping to train the AI, is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. And I'm humbled to say that there are way more unemployed lawyers than there are unemployed software developers out there.
So is there anything else that you want to share with the audience before we go, I mean, in terms of lessons learned?
I think that the other thing is, I heard somebody talking about taking incremental steps. I think that's very, very true at our company. And like I said, we started off with step 1, which was just solving that first entry pain point, saw that got traction, and then we went to step 2, which is solving the second pain point, which is responding to the discovery requests that you get. And then when we realized, okay, well, we've solved those 2 pain points and there's a market for that, then we started thinking bigger and thinking, maybe Moneyball for litigation. And when we started selling that message, I think that because we had credibility with the first 2 pain points that we'd solved and people realized it worked, right? At first, when we told them we could do this, it was kind of like that CEO from that entrepreneur pitch was like, okay, well, how much of this can you actually do? And so we were actually able to solve and show significant savings in time and in money for pain points 1 and 2, which is why we have the credibility now to dream bigger and sell Moneyball for litigation. And so I think that taking those small incremental steps are really important, because otherwise I think a lot of people feel like AI is overhyped.
Right.
And so they have to see the practical applications.
I think that's fantastic, and I agree with you. I mean, from all of the engagements that we've seen, and even from the examples that Rashir shared, it really is about starting with that one use case, right? Proving the value, and then being able to scale throughout your organization. And it sounds like that's exactly what you've done. Well, Enoch, thank you so much. If you have questions for Enoch, our information is up here, but certainly we're willing to take some questions now, if anyone would like. It's such a shy group.
I do have a question while listening to that. So you mentioned that lawyers like to be in the courtroom, and as you know, IBM had a project called Project Debater, which maybe someday in 20 years, right, is going to argue legal cases or something like that. You can see that future happening.
Yes, we've been looking into that.
Yeah, so what do you see as the roadmap between sort of where we are today with AI and legal tech and where we might be in, say, 20 or 30 years when you do have a machine sitting there helping you in the courtroom, trying the case and making the arguments for you? What are the intermediate steps?
I think we're still a really, really long way away from that. I still think that the tools that are being built today using AI are still much more focused at the repeatable process volume tasks that you see, as opposed to the extemporaneous argument, extemporaneous persuasion that's being done in a courtroom. And I do think that jurors and judges, they want to see human beings telling human stories, as opposed to having an AI, be the advocate. But I do think that as we build our system out all the way from step 1 until the trial, that eventually you will be able to have an AI legal assistant there picking out potentially the best arguments for you to use in your closing argument or in your opening statement or in your cross-examination. And we've definitely been watching and keeping track of IBM Watson Debater, because we find that very, very interesting, because that's essentially taking a lawyer's role,
Well, hopefully it's not going to replace the lawyer, but just augment the work that he or she is doing, yeah?
Yeah, we'll see.
Hi, I'm wondering how you're thinking about human in the loop. It sounded like you're pre-populating the draft first and then having the human edit that versus suggestions for the human as they're working. How are you guys thinking about that?
The former, not the latter. So we do not have any human involvement between the upload of the complaint and the production of the first draft. That's why it only takes 2 minutes. But a lawyer, when he or she signs a document that's submitted to the court or to the other side, has to meet ethical obligations and professional obligations. So a lawyer has to review that first draft before he or she signs it. So the human in the loop comes after the AI has generated the work product.
And you're finding that there's no problems with, like, it takes more effort to go through it the second time?
So there's no more effort to go through it. There's no problems when you have the AI doing that?
We would say that we're seeing 80% cost savings because in the end, the lawyer is still spending 20% of the time editing it to fit his or her style, or usually deleting stuff that they think the AI suggested was extraneous. But lawyers are a skeptical bunch. And so they're going to want to put his or her stamp on the document. So they are spending some time doing that. But that initial first draft, we found, is usually good enough to file and oftentimes a lot better than what they're getting anyway. It's because we've compared it against what's filed. So.
And I think we're out of time, yeah? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you, Michelle.